Welcome back, everybody. So today we are going to do a project where we take 3 test scores and we find the average of those test scores. So we are going to start talking about math in C++, and just as a quick aside, I want to say, programmers are not mathematicians. So if you're not strong at math, don't worry about that. A lot of people have the ill-conceived idea that you have to be super great at math to program. I promise you that is not the case. I've met a lot of great programmers who are just completely average at math. And while it doesn't hurt you to know math, it certainly won't hold you back. So hang on, you're going to be just fine. So with this first assignment, we're going to follow these directions here. We're going to ask the user for 3 test scores. We're going to input those, and then we're going to do math on them and output the results. That's simple. So we'll start by doing our std cout as we've been doing to communicate with the user. And then we're going to create variables for our 3 tests. And it's best to create variables right before you use them. So I know in the past assignment we did it at the top. That's kind of like an older way of doing it in C, but we're going to usually create our variables right before we use them. So to hold our test scores, we're going to use the data type double, which is for holding numbers that have a decimal point after it. You can think of it like that. There's also a float, which you can use as well, but either one works for what we're going to use today. I'm going to include a complete list of data types below this video that you can check on. Just know that an int is usually for integers that don't have a decimal point after them, whereas double, you can use that for ones that do have a decimal point after. So we're going to create variables for each test score. So we're just going to say T1 double T2 double T3. Alright, and as you see here, this has taken up quite a bit of space. We could also do it this way, T1, T2, T3, and that will do the exact same thing as if we were to have each on their own line. The reason that I do it here, where it's each on its own line, is because I want to show you the difference between what's called assignment and initialization. So say we had already taken test 1, we already know the score that we got. We got an A because we studied really hard for it. This right here, so we're creating this variable T1 with the value of 98 already. That is called initialization. So if we were to create the variable, let's say test 2, and it didn't have a value in it, but later we got that value, so T2, we got another A, let's say we got an A minus this time. So this is called assignment. So if we were to create the variable before and then later assign it a value, that's called assignment, which is different from initialization, where it's created with a value already. So if you hear those terms thrown around, that's what that means. And we'll just do it the right way here. T1, T2, T3. Alright, so we need to take in those test results, so we'll use cin, like we've been using, to grab that data from the user. So we'll go T1, T2, and so basically what will happen is every time the user inputs a number and hits enter, it'll just input it into each of these variables. So it'll just hit 95, enter, that'll go here, 90 whatever, T2, and then whatever other third score they put in will go in T3. So for the final score, we are actually going to initialize the score to it. So we're going to say double, we're going to say final, and here we have this is a good opportunity to talk about keywords. So we couldn't name our final grade final because final is a keyword. And a keyword is basically a reserved word that you can't use anywhere inside your program for like naming a variable or naming a function. It only has one specific use. So other examples of reserved keywords would be like double or cout or main or ints or return. So these have one very specific function in C++. They can't be used anywhere else outside of that. And I will include a list of reserved keywords again under this video. There's not like too many of them or anything like that, don't worry, but just know that you can't use them in any other instance than their designated function in C++. So for our final grade, we'll initialize it. We'll just call it final grade, and it's going to be equal to the average of these three tests. So we'll just say T1 plus T2 plus T3 divided by 3.0. And so here's your first look at some mathematical operators. A lot of them are just going to be things that you have seen since elementary school. So there's going to be the plus sign, the minus sign, division, and you'll use these parentheses, just to keep order of operations nice and organized. So all we're doing is we're just adding up all three scores here, and then we're going to divide by 3.0. And you might be wondering why I'm putting a 0.0 here. The reason is because we want that double to have a decimal point at the end, and if all these numbers were to be integers and I were just to divide by 3 without the 0.0, in some operating systems it would just output an integer, and we want that to come out as a double. So the way we basically introduce, or the reason we introduce a decimal point in it, is just to guarantee that the output, to guarantee that final grade will have a decimal point in it. So after we do that, we're just going to say to the user what their final score was. Alright, and then after that we are just going to save it and run it. Alright, so our program pops up here. It's asking for our three grades, so let's go ahead and put in a 97, an 87, and let's just say an 85. Perfect, and so it worked. We got a double here with the decimal place, as you can see afterwards, and didn't spell final grade correctly, but that's alright. Program worked. Great job. On to the next lesson. For deeper learning on C++, visit us at makethingswithcpp.com and be sure to like and subscribe.